Hey, y'all. My name is Chris McAlilly. I am lead pastor here at Oxford University United Methodist Church. And today is early in February. I think it's February the 4th, which means that a little over 9-10 days ago, we've been through a pretty significant ice storm Fern, I think is what they're calling it. I'm here today with Pat Ward, who's one of our friends in the community, he, a former pastor, a counselor in town, and we always love talking to you, Pat, but wanted to bring you on for a conversation about what we've been through.
Yeah, and it has been a lot. You know, I think we were saying right now, we kind of, when we see somebody we hadn't seen in a week, we say, hey, do you have lights at your house? Do you have water at your house? Do you have heat? You know, everybody has different answers to that still. And so
yeah, no
still
doubt.
Have a lot of people. Most of the people in the city, I think, have power restored, at least to their house, whether they can be into it or not. But still out in the county, a lot of people still waiting for that. And so we're still very much in the middle of it as life kind of starts up again, but some people are still stuck in it. So
no doubt. If you're finding this video and you live outside of Lafayette County or even outside Mississippi, you know, I think one of the things that, maybe you've been watching is the impact of a storm. But one of the things I'm finding, even from people that live in Jackson or maybe on the Gulf Coast, depending on what's shaping the algorithm and their feed, they may or may not know like the significance of the impact of what feels like a pretty significant, devastating event for the county.
Right.
The city, I do think, has everyone in the city has power and water. Yeah. But in the county, as of this morning, I think over 8,000 people still didn't have power.
Right.
So there are relief efforts going on into the county, taking essential resources. One of the things we want to talk about in this conversation is some of the resources that you've offered from your area of expertise are kind of in the mental health space.
Sure.
And how do you help people think about going through, it feels like maybe you would call it, I don't even know, I don't have the right language yet, but a communal tragic or traumatic event might be what I would lean towards. How do you help think about how to frame what has happened to us when you're talking to folks?
I mean, I do think it's one part, it was kind of like a lot of people thought this was just another snow day, especially kids. And that's why some of the stuff that I've been trying to encourage people with is how to talk to their kids about it, because they thought we're just going to have a couple of days off of school and then we're going to go back and we're going to take some pictures in the snow and sled a little bit and everything will be fine. And I think it began to dawn on people a couple of days in. This is something very different. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's like a community-wide trauma that we've experienced. I'm not trying to be over dramatic about that, but I think one of my working definitions of trauma is too much happens too fast. And that definitely happened. We had one night we went to bed, the whole town was fine. By the time the sun came up the next day, it was in a very different state. And so for a lot of people, there were a lot of logistical things that they were working through and a lot of things that, had to be canceled and had to be rearranged. I think for some young people, especially teenagers who remember what it was like 5 years ago to live through COVID and have their birthday party canceled and have, school canceled indefinitely and things like that, I think it really kind of brought some of those feelings back up too. And, I did mention most of the power's back on in town, but in some of our underserved communities, I mean, to wipe out a whole fridge worth of groceries, to, lose 2 weeks worth of income, I mean, it had a profound impact that will take months for people to recover from that. And so,
not to mention just removing the debris from a yard. Some of the quotes I've heard are upwards of $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. I mean, people don't have that kind of money. I don't have that kind of money to put in that direction. It's hard. And I've been trying to think about what's the right frame. So I think in these kinds of moments, as I'm talking to my children, as I'm even thinking about this for myself, I think the question is, what have I experienced that is similar to this? And so then you go back to COVID or, in our family, my parents lived on the Gulf Coast after Katrina. Right. And so, one of the things that my father has said to me is this is like an Arctic North Mississippi hurricane. Yeah. Or whatever. Yeah. How do you, when you're in a counseling setting, or if you're a parent that's trying, maybe not taking your kid to a formal counseling engagement, but or trying to kind of offer some frameworks to help a child or, an adolescent kind of navigate this stuff in their own mind.
Yeah.
Like what are some of the first steps that you go through?
So here's a couple of things. And there's some things that are true about this disaster, but also things in the future too to keep in mind. First is it's really helpful for kids if you focus on things that haven't changed or things that aren't changing. It's true, yes, school was canceled, but we're going to go back to school eventually. Yes, we've lost a lot of trees in the yard, and our yard doesn't look like it used to. But here are some things that are the same, and our family's together, and we are, we're figuring this out. And I think that helps kids find a sense of grounding. As adults, we have these other experiences, so we know, hey, for the most part, we're going to make it through. Most people have that confidence. Again, we have some communities in town that don't have that confidence, but most people have that awareness of. And I went through the ice storm in 1994. We didn't have power for 2 weeks, and remember that, hey, the lights did come back on again. And so, but kids don't have that inherent awareness. So anything we can do to give them that sense of grounding, help them see what isn't changing. That's the advice that I give to people who are going through divorce, who are moving their family to a different town. I mean, it's always good to focus on what isn't changing in the midst of things that are. I also have been encouraging people to really spend some time talking through that Saturday night, Sunday morning with their kids. One of the things that happened, the trees were breaking from the way the ice, they were exploding because of the change in the pressure inside the trees and things like that. And a lot of kids were awake for that. And so it just helps when you go through something that is scary like that. It helps to talk through it. I can't tell you how many times I have, my kids have been awake in the middle of the night with a thunderstorm. And so, even in talking about the next day, it was like, I know you guys were asleep, but it was so loud. And I heard the wind and I was so scared in my bed. And it was good for them to talk about it. It was also good because then I could say, no, I was awake the whole time. I was watching, I was listening to the radio. And so I was there. And I think that gives them a sense of grounding too.
Yeah, one of the things that, as you're talking about that, I'm remembering a time when my daughter, we were at Pickwick Lake, which is a lake not far away from where we are in North Mississippi. And the kids were all playing capture the flag or whatever they were doing. And then they all came back, except for my daughter, who at the time was 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah.
And we found her, but she was just absolutely terrified. She was close to the water. It was an incredibly scary event for all of us. And as we talk about that in our family, as we've tried to talk about it with our daughter, and then this happened, and then this happened. It's putting it in a narrative where at the end of the narrative, she is back home and safe and secure. And I do think that that's one thing that kids do need. They need a way to navigate, like, this is where we were, and this is what we went through. And then at the end, right, we're all here together and we're all safe. Yeah. And I think just framing the narrative and telling the story of what happened is a helpful thing for kids. What are some,
and not just for kids, for adults too. I mean, we had some flooding on the night that the storm came through, and it was like 36 hours later. I was taking a shower. I was like, oh my gosh! I was just thinking about that night, and I called a buddy of mine just to tell him, like, hey, this is what happened to us. What happened with y'all? And it felt good for me to actually tell that story. When our brain works to try to conserve as much energy as possible, but to make sense of the world as much as we can. And so when we go through things, we kind of file them in a file cabinet. Like, I was safe, I was unsafe. I understand this, I don't understand this. This was my fault, it wasn't my fault. And when we go through something traumatic, it's like, all the files end up on the floor or behind the file cabinet in the wrong file. And so the act of talking it through helps us kind of pick up those pieces and file them away better. And it keeps it from, affecting us at an emotional level too.
What are some other either frameworks or things to keep in mind, any other wisdom that you would offer for parents? So
talking about things is a good sign. When your kids are talking about stuff they've been through, that's a really good sign. You may hear things you don't understand, you don't like, you don't agree with, but really if they're talking about it, then that's a good thing, and we should encourage them to do that, whether it's about this disaster or anything else that they're going through. I also think it's really important for parents to remember, a lot of times anxiety, when it shows up, it looks like misbehavior. And so we can punish that misbehavior, or we can offer consequences, or we can create damaging narratives about kids and how they're acting, they're spoiled, or they don't understand what's going on, or they're ungrateful, but really they're just anxious. And so if we can see it as that, even if it's hard, even if we're kind of at the end of our rope, we can respond differently to that. And so, I've been encouraging people in the midst of this, if you can and so many people for last week were doing Little House on the Prairie. I mean, they were boiling water and they were, having to refill generators and stuff. But if you can just sit down for a few minutes and give your kids some connection, it really helps calm that anxiety in them. And I think it can really help them. A couple of other things. I mean, just encouraging kids to name their feelings. That's always a helpful skill. And they have these good online. They have these good charts or graphics that help kids point to different pictures of kids and say, "Oh, I'm feeling this. I'm feeling excited, or I'm feeling sad, or I'm not really feeling scared, but I'm feeling, lonely." And it just helps kids build a vocabulary around that, and that'll serve them well through the rest of their life too. I think the only other thing too that I've encouraged people towards is looking for ways to serve. I mean, that it did give us an enormous opportunity and continues to give us an enormous opportunity to serve people in the community. And my philosophy is empathy is a muscle. Like we need to develop it and we need to work it out. And sometimes, the last week has given us a chance for that.
Yeah, there was someone that I was serving alongside who has more just a lot more experience in life, has been through a lot more stuff than I have. And they were talking about moments in life where they have been despairing.
Yeah.
And one of the ways in which they've navigated their despair and sense of hopelessness is to actually engage in compassion and service of others.
That's right.
It gets you moving in a different direction.
That's right.
And you can kind of work out some of that energy that leads you to a place of despair. Nothing is ever going to change by actually doing something and making small change.
Right.
And so, it's been, I've seen that over and over and over again.
Right.
Be helpful for folks.
For kids, it helps them not feel powerless. There is something you can do even when there's a lot you can't control about this, and that really helps. And then I think that's good for adults as well. Just to remember that and see that. And we had this amazing circumstance that happened. We started putting together some groceries and giving it to some places in town that we knew were in need. We also saw where people were really cold. I mean, that's the thing. It was kind of like a tornado hit the town, but it was also 14 degrees some nights. And so we saw people shivering and didn't have shoes they needed, didn't have coats. And so we got a whole bunch of coats together and we started giving away. And in the course of a couple of hours, we gave away hundreds of coats, and we ran out of coats. And at one of the lunch drop-offs, people kept coming and didn't have enough clothes. And so I saw my friends Andre and Yvonne take off the coats that they had and give them to those people. Later that night, we were giving out more coats. We ran out of coats again. There were more cold people, and I saw Andre and Yvonne give their coats to other people. I didn't see it, but they gave their coats to other people. And my kids witnessed that, and they got to see that. And I told them afterwards, I said, I want you to understand something. That is not like a super Christian thing to do, like a Christian highlight by two super Christians. Like forever, like that was the baseline of Christianity. And we have lost that at some point. We've made it something political, and we've decided Christianity is about you have to think this way, or you have to be mad at these things, or you have to distrust these certain people, and we've added so many layers of it. But at the heart of it is, if you know Jesus and you know somebody without a coat, give them yours. And I said, I want you guys to remember that. It was beautiful, but that's supposed to be Tuesday for Christians. And so, we don't really have that opportunity very often to share that with kids. And so I was really blessed by having the opportunity for them to see that.
I do think that yes and amen. And when the normal basic systems of life begin to fail, they're probably going to come back, and they are coming back online. But in the midst of it, you kind of have this sense of disorientation. And that's always an opportunity, I think, to either deepen your faith, kind of access some deeper resources for your own mental, spiritual, and emotional health, or they can go the other way. And every day you have a choice, and there's agency within it, both for you as a parent, for your kids. And so, I think that's super helpful. super helpful advice. Any last words before we
I think just
close down this conversation?
For anybody, it would be, I mean, we've been through a lot. If you live here and you haven't like accepted that or just like giving yourself some grace for that, hey, I've been through a lot. If I need to take a nap, if I need to care for myself, if I need to make a second cup of coffee and sit here and drink it instead of just going to do something else, then that's okay. So, I think just coming to that realization and caring for yourselves in the next couple of weeks would be really helpful.
Well, thanks for being with us, Pat.
Yeah,
thanks for the conversation. We'll be back in the coming days with additional conversations, offering some resources from folks that we've seen in the community who are offering their wisdom and expertise to help us in the community. So thanks a lot, Pat.
Yeah, thanks for having me.